Okay, so I'm just going to have a look at the ramp tool with this elevated floor that I've added, and so I'm just changing to a section box view there. So you can see that I've added this floor that's been raised 300mm above my main floor level, and so I want to insert a ramp in there for disabled access, and so I'm going to do it from the rear. So I'm going to go into plan view and do some of the working out there. So I'm just going to go to edit boundary, and I'll start just by drawing a line that is going to be perpendicular to this diagonal line. I'll show you a couple of tricks here. I want to measure from this corner at that angle, and that can be quite tricky with Revit. So I'm going to draw a line perpendicular to my diagonal line. Oops. And then pick that line up and use move to snap it to the corner, and that way I can then copy it from there to measure along this diagonal line at the same angle. So I'm going to make that 1000. So that's really one of the only easy ways of getting a point that's a metre along that line perpendicular to the original line. Okay, so that's the, so I want that distance basically. You could also set it out this way, so I could have measured from there, so it's ended up being less than a metre in that direction, but diagonally it's a metre, so that's probably okay. I could also, though, if I'm measuring this way, maybe put in something like a reference plane and make it 1000 there. I know 900's a normal passageway, but 1000's always good. And so then I could move that line further so it snaps to the reference plane instead. You can see there, just going to use tab maybe to make sure it's snapping at the angle of my baseline. Okay, so I'm going to draw in another line now, connecting those two. So again, I've got the same angle here. Let's join those together. So I can clear that. So I want my ramp to start from there. I'm going to bring this floor back probably even further, but I've established there the start point of my ramp, and I might actually put a reference plane in just to keep that position. And so then here you can see I've got the again the angle that I want my ramp to follow, and so I need to have an idea of some of the values I'm going to be using in the ramp. And so if I want the ramp to rise 300mm, I can simply have a 1 in 14 ramp because it exceeds, I know it's going to exceed 1900mm in length. So it'll be 1 in 14, and the length won't exceed what I need to have a landing, which is 9 metres, you can see here. Oops. But we need to know those values before we can work the ramp out, and I'll put those values into the ramp when I make it as well. So I'm just going to start by setting out the size of the ramp in plan, and so calculate it. It's probably not the most difficult calculation, but let's bring it up anyway. So I want to rise 300mm. The slope is 1 in 14, so I'll just multiply that by 14. That gives me the length in millimetres. It's that easy. So 4.2 metres. So I can copy this reference plane, or I could use offset, but I'll show you a trick with a reference plane. You can't use the offset tool. It doesn't pick up reference planes, but you can use the reference plane tool, use pick lines, and then type in an offset value there. So 4200 is the amount I want to offset, and then I can pick that reference plane, and I've offset the reference plane. Okay, so then my floor edge could come back to there. So tick to finish, and now I can put my ramp in. So back to the architecture tab, and then using ramp, and I'm going to put in a value here for the, also we'll change the slope first, sorry, so I'm going to go to edit type, duplicate, and we'll call this AS 1428. Ramp. Okay, so then I can go down and put in the slope here, so you can see 1 in 12 is probably what's required in America, but here 1 in 14. And then the maximum length is, 9,000. So that means if I use this somewhere else, it won't go beyond the maximum length without putting in a landing. The thickness there, I'll leave that at 150. So I'm just going to click OK. And then I'm just going to draw the ramp. And a good trick here is to draw the ramp with the angle if you don't want to make a reference plane, just following the angle of something else. So I could draw it here and make it follow that edge. And then we know the length is 4,200, so I can just go along until I've measured that amount. That works. If that's a bit fiddly though, there's nothing to stop you putting in a reference plane to follow that angle, and it should snap so that you can then measure. And actually it hasn't, it's gone at a different angle, so I'm going to draw the reference plane over the line, and that way it'll be exactly at that angle. So a bit like stairs, if you put reference planes in, it can help you to draw them accurately. So I've got the angle that I want with my reference plane, and I can now drag the reference plane away from that edge, and now if I select it again, I can use the dimensions there to center or make this reference plane go through where the center of the ramp, or center line of the ramp will go, which is 500 mil from the edge. So measuring here, that should be 1 meter across. Ah, now I did mine, sorry, I thought I'd done that 1 meter. Okay, that was stupid of me, so that's okay. I can always adjust the floor, so I'll do the measurement from this side, because I want that floor to stay on that line there. I'll bring this one back so that it is 1 meter afterwards, and for now I'll just make this 500 from that side. So that's the center line of my ramp, and I could even then, to make my life even easier, draw another reference plane perpendicular to that, so I could trace this line or just draw one over here as long as it's perpendicular, and then using the dimensions again, I know it's 4,200. So I've got the center of my ramp drawn, and now using the run option I can again draw a ramp starting on the intersection there, and that should line up exactly 4,200 to the end. I'm going to finish that, and it's saying it's not long enough to reach the top constraint. That's fine, I don't want it to be. If the top constraint is level 1. I only need this ramp to be 300 high, which unfortunately it won't tell me in properties, but I'll have a look in the section and you'll see then that it is exactly that height, 300. So notice how it's put the railings on for me, and that's one of the main advantages of the ramp tool as opposed to the other method I'm going to show you. So I'll just select this floor and I'll bring it back to follow the edge of the ramp. Okay, so going into the section box. Okay, so you can see there the ramp lines up pretty well, but it doesn't have a base. Okay, so when you set the thickness of the ramp, it's always measured from the top down, and it's just a consistent thickness all the way. There's no option to make a solid ramp. So if I want that to be solid, which is probably the way it would be built, the only way really is to model a solid shape there. So the railings couldn't follow the slope, and this is one of the main limitations with 2016. Revit 2017, they give you a few more options for having sloping railings hosted by different objects. So I'll just show you though, if I have a floor there instead, so it's clear, so using the floor tool, just copy this line, oops, sorry, got to join them. Because I've just made a floor in the same shape as my ramp. I'll show you a really interesting option you have with floors is this modify sub-elements. And then you get these corner points, a little bit like massing actually. So you can stretch those points. So I can make these points all at different heights. I'll make this one minus 300. And so you can do really interesting slopes with floors. So again, modify sub-elements, and I can change this one to be, oops, that's got the edge, so that's why it's minus 150. I want the corner, so minus 300 as well. I could have just done the edge in the first place, but there we go. So that'll give you most ramp shapes. Curved ramps don't work too well using this approach, but otherwise you can slope any floor that way. And that can be useful, but again it's still not solid. So it's going in under my floor, which probably isn't a huge problem, but also if I want a railing to follow that, it's not going to work properly. So I'm going to bring back my ramp and just show you one final thing. Probably all pretty good at this by now, but just to make sure, I might make this ramp really thin. So maybe just 20 mil, and I might have, say, timber flooring on that or something. And then I could just model in a solid form under that. So using model in place, looking at floors, and with extrusion, I can use set, pick a plane, and choose the side of this floor here, which is at the same angle. And then just use pick lines and pick the bottom of the ramp, edge of my floor, and then maybe the bottom of this. Join those together. There we go. So I'll just bring this back, fit in under the ramp. There we go. Well, you don't need it in terms of the BCA because it's less than a metre, but you should have you should really have a railing there. And I think actually with the 1428, they probably have a requirement for handrails, even if it's only that high. Yeah, I'm pretty sure they do. So. I don't think so, but it's all in here, so maybe, but yeah, I'm not sure. It is just standard practice to always have a railing when you do a ramp. I don't even think about it, but if you read through that section there, clause 12, so you'd have to go and look at clause 12. Here we go, handrails. just read through that section there, it'll tell you. But yeah, I'd say almost definitely you would need a railing. Yeah, it's a fairly simple thing to add in when you've got a ramp like that. And then gives a good chance to quickly look at the railing tool as well, because you can do a lot with those, especially for interiors. So I know something people often ask about is doing plain glass railings, or doing railings that have different baluster patterns. And so one of the most common issues people have at first when they're trying to set up their own railings is just finding where you can get them from the library. So have I shown you before how you can get railings loaded in? Exactly, sample files, yeah, that's it. So just like stairs. And so sorry, just making sure my massing's off. There we are. And so here I've got an area where I want to draw some railings. So I can just draw in any railing initially using sketch path. And so I'm just going to follow my edge there. Finish that and back into my 3D view so you can see it. I'll put the massing back on. Okay, so there's the railing I've added, and to change that to one from sample files, just go and open, and that's what people forget. You don't use load family, you just need to open the file, and then you can browse sample files. And unlike stairs, there aren't two different types of railings, so you can open any railings file. And so I won't go through all the properties, but it's good to just start thinking about how you can use the or the settings in a railing to make your own. It's a bit slow opening that. So you've got these predefined patterns, and for glass, these can be a problem because they have a panel size that's set up both as part of this railing but also in the panel family as well, or in the baluster family. So if we go to edit type for this, you'll see if you go to baluster placement, it's using this glass panel with fixings. So I'm going to bring that into my project and show you why this will cause problems sometimes. So I'm just going to use copy to clipboard and then switch back to my 3D view. Oops. And then once I paste that and just place it somewhere, I can of course delete that particular railing and change any railing in this file to that same railing type. And you can see then that this glass panel doesn't fit properly. And so if I select that, you can see then I've got the option to edit the path, but I can't edit that panel. And so how do you change that, or how do you even find out how that family's been set up? You basically need to know how to get to the families in your project using your project browser. So if you have a look at the bottom of your project browser, you'll see there's a families section. So I'm going to expand that, and then you'll see there's a list there with all of the families loaded into your project. So if you go down to balusters in your railings. Okay, so you can see there you've got railings, and then you've got these different baluster families. So you've got their glass panel with fixings. That's the one it's using. So I can right click and then go to edit. Okay, so then you can see there's the glass panel. And it might look a bit strange at first actually until you see it in an elevation view. So in left or right actually. And you can see then why it doesn't work too well in the one I've brought it into, because this basically is set up mainly to work with stairs. So it does adjust the angle according to your stair slope, but the width is fixed at 1,000. So if you want that to be adjustable, you need to go and change that, that width property. So I'll just switch back to my project file, and you can see then, oops, actually I don't want this file, I'll just close that one. So back into my project file, and I might just need to check the plan view. Okay, so I could measure the width there. So it's what, 600 roughly, and then go back and so just using Control Tab or just using the window button up here, change to the family and then try a different width. So if I go into family types there and make that width 600, click OK, and you can see there it's giving an error telling me that the constraints aren't satisfied. So I can try removing the constraints, but that may cause other problems. So there's a real issue there when you're trying to use these panels that have predefined sizes. So what I thought I'd show you is how you can make your own from scratch. So especially for things like plain glass, or I even can do glass with a handrail on top. It's much easier to make your own from scratch usually rather than trying to edit those existing families. Even though you can edit them, it's usually more trouble than it's worth. So to make a plain glass panel, like I said, the best way is to make your own family. So if you go and make a new family, and have you made profile families? Any of you? No? They're one of the most useful. So if you haven't made many families before, this is one that everyone should be able to make. And they are, I think they're the easiest to make. And in some ways, they're probably the most useful as well. So I'll just show you again what I've done. So when you go new and then family, it'll take you to the templates folder, and in there you just need to find metric profile. And the reason I think it's the easiest is because it's 2D. A profile is always two-dimensional, and so you don't have any options for modelling 3D shapes. You only have options for drawing lines. So I'm going to draw a line here, but I'm going to make a rectangle using the line tool, and I'm going to start on the intersection of these two reference planes, and I'm going to make the size roughly what I want, but I'm not going to be too fussy there because I'll adjust it afterwards. Okay, so I've drawn a rectangle. If you're wondering what I'm making, this is going to be the glass. So I'm drawing the shape of the glass as it would be when it's cut through. So it's one single sheet of glass. And so how thick do you think glass is normally? Yeah, it is 6, if someone says 6. Yeah, 6 mil is normal, but 10 mil is probably what you'd want to show it as a minimum. And even that can be a bit too narrow because the lines might blur together in your section. So you could make it 15 even. In reality, though, it probably would be about 6 mil. And then the top there is going to be the height of my handrail, or the balustrade. So I just want this to be a solid sheet of glass. And so I'm going to make that 1,000 standard railing height. Done. That's it. That's my profile family. Now, once you think about how you can use parameters, you could make one rectangle profile family for all of the rectangles you ever need to use in Revit. But for now, I'm just going to make this rectangle fixed at the size that I've made it. So I'm going to go to Save As, Family, save it into the Revit library on the P drive. You'll see there's a Profiles folder there, and it's got a lot of rectangle families already. I've made this one before, but not quite this size. So I've made 20 by 1,000. This one is 15 by 1,000. So you'll come across uses for profile families all the time, for skirtings, for gutters, cornices, edges of bench tops, all sorts of things. So they're really useful, and you know, when I'm doing my own projects, I'll probably find myself making families, you know, profile families several times a day in some cases. So really useful, and make sure you definitely should know how to do them. So again, I'm going to save this file as just a dimension. I could say that it's a rectangle in the name as well. Just to make it even clearer. And then I'm going to use Load into Project, tick my file. And now I'll go back into the 3D view just so you can see it as I make the changes. Okay, so I've got this railing that's not really working. I'm going to select it, edit type, duplicate, and we'll start with plain glass. So I'll go back to the rail structure, and you can see there we've got these two rails. I'm going to delete the higher one, and it's going to give me a warning about balusters using it as a reference. That's okay. I'm just going to say yes, I want to continue, and then with the bottom rail I'll change that to glass, make the height 0, and then the offset, what was the thickness again? So I'm going to make that 7.5, half of my thickness. And then the profile, here is where I can choose the profile I've made. The rectangle 15 by 1,000. And then all I need to do is change the material to glass. And that's got pretty much everything I need. I've just got to take a few other things out. So if I click OK there, well, I'll just click Apply, and no, we can't see it, so I'll click OK, and then OK again, and it's going to give me a warning, that's fine. Click OK, and I can see there I've got this plain sheet of glass. But I'm going to go back to Edit Type and just show you there still are balusters in there. I don't really want balusters, so I'm going to take those out, just setting all these options to none. Just to make sure they don't come back. So that's going to give me a plain sheet of glass, which is something that you can do these days. They still have support, but it's below the floor, so it's concealed. So that's an easy way of doing a plain sheet of glass for your railings, and I can now draw that in everywhere. So if I go to draw another railing, like I need here, just using the railing tool, oops, I've got my plain glass, drawing along the edge there. Back into the section box view. There it is. If I want that to go down below the floor, then I can go back and edit the profile and make it have a depth that goes down below the reference planes. And that's a fairly easy thing to do. And more importantly, I can use this on my stairs now. So if I make stairs, I can match the railing and use the same railing on that stairs as well. Now you may want a handrail on top of this. It's not that nice if you have to grab the top of a sheet of glass. So you could always go and edit the type, and I'll duplicate this and I'll call it plain glass handrail. And then I can add a top rail in using one of these profiles that's already been loaded, or you can make your own. So I'll make that 1,000. And there we are. So I've got a simple plain glass railing with my own handrail on top, and you can easily modify that. There's one little secret with handrails. So you can see there I chose the type there from the list that I've got in top rail, and it's an easy thing to miss actually. You've got railings here when you click on the edit button next to the rail structure, and they use profiles just like the one I've made, but the top rail it's a bit confusing because it's yet another system family. So the reason railings and stairs are probably a little bit tricky to work with compared to regular families initially is because they're not loadable families. They're system families, and you change them by plugging in loadable families, like the profile I've just made. But the top rail is another system family. So you can't just choose your own top rail family very easily, and you can't easily choose a profile for those. What you need to do is remember what I showed you near the beginning. You need to find the top rails in your list of families in your project browser. Go down there and you'll see there are the predefined top rail families, and you can go and edit them from there. So if you go to type properties by right clicking on one of those, doesn't matter which one you start with, and then you can choose any of them from the list, duplicate, and so I'll make this rectangular. I don't know what sizes I have there, but let's say it's what did I have actually before that I made? 30 by 25 by 70, because I know I made that size. Millimeters. Here's one that so I did that as a mullion, didn't I? Anyhow, I just want to show you that I can now choose from my list of profiles any profile that I've loaded. So let's say square for now. I'll come back and change this. And then you've got the hand clearance there, and these other options you can change. So the projection, so on. So I can make that 0, and that's going to change the projection there. And that does take a bit of trial and error, but you can see there that's going to now, well, let's go and get a profile first that's going to make sense. So I'm going to make a new family. So that's why, like I was saying, you often find yourself making a lot of profile families as you're working with Revit. Okay, so I'm going to, again, draw a line, make a rectangle. So this I will centre, and well, I'll do the size I said, even though it's probably not the best size for a handrail, just so you get the basic idea. So, sorry, 35, not 30. There we go. Okay, so now to put that in, got to go and find top rail again in the project browser. Go to type properties, I'll fix this name up, choose the family I've just made, and then to use it finally in the 3D view maybe, and select that railing, go to edit type, and now I've got rectangle 30 by 70. There we are. Okay, so you can see there it's not centered. I probably want that to be centered, so again it's a bit tedious, but I have to go back to the top rail type and go to type properties there to adjust that hand clearance. So I'll try 0 because that should be centered, but no, it's to one side. So okay, so it's minus 35. We'll bring it back. Oh no, so actually it's going to be minus 70. It's really unusual the way that is, but there we are. So that's centered. There we go. So it takes a bit of setting up, but once you do, then you can apply that to all of your railings. And of course works with stairs at whatever slope. Just unfortunate that they have, I think they put it in there to make it easier for you, this top rail as a new system family. I can just imagine the developers all having a big discussion about it and deciding that that would be a good option for people, but I think it actually has created extra work. They could have just done it with the regular rail property in your railings. Here, if you go here to rail structure, you can actually do the top handrail using an extra rail if you like. But there are some advantages to using top rails. So apart from that, like I said, I don't want to go, there are lots more properties, believe it or not, in railings, but I don't want to spend too long on that. So something I did just want to quickly show you though, if you haven't had a look at the fencing. So there's a file called fencing in sample files as well. So really useful if you ever have to do any fencing. But also, it has some, and they're all done with rails, so there's no fence tool in Revit, it's all done with railing. And so they have some rails there that are set up in a slightly more interesting way than the ones in the railing file. So for this picket fence, for example, it's a bit easier to understand as well how balusters work when you look at a railing like this, because if you go to edit type and then look at the baluster placement, stretch it out and you'll see we've just got a whole lot of balusters. So it has standard picket fence with pickets for, about 15, and then a post. So if you look through the list here, we've got this one called feather edge, and it's got a spacing from the previous, 125 basically. And then if you scroll down, you'll get to the square one. So there are 16, or roughly 15, I think, because there's one at the beginning as well. So you've got 15 of those, and then you've got a square post. And then you've got 15 again. So once you understand that, you can do interesting patterns of balusters with posts every so often. Put a rail over the top, and that will give you almost any handrail you can think of, in combination with what I just showed you about profiles. So looking at this one, that's much simpler because we've just got alternating pickets. So looking at the baluster placement there, we've just got the two. And then you've got the corners down the bottom, so the start and the end, and then any corner posts, which usually use the same baluster. So that's all there is to it. And so again, looking at those, you can see an interesting thing. You can actually do things like roofs and stairs. You'll see sometimes roofs and awnings. You'll see sometimes people use balusters for those. And so I'll give you a file which has a lot of information on the different things you can do with balusters, or sorry, with railings, I mean. And, sorry, it's not in here, it must be in one of these other folders. Sorry, 214. Sorry, I'll just put it in a funny place. Here we go. Okay, so I've just put a file in your CAD 4 folder called Creating Advanced Stairs, which actually has more information on making railings and stairs. But once you see this, you maybe realise how powerful that tool is. So to do complex stairs like this, and even transportation systems. That's all done with the railing tool. Oh, that's just the path. So you just draw a curving path. So when you're drawing a railing, you can draw an arc instead of a straight line, and that's no problem. But to get something like this, you do need to set up the properties a bit more. And but again, you can see here how you can make those panels adaptive and do lots of different things with them that I haven't shown you, and get much more complicated stairs and particularly railing shapes associated with those. So if you want to go further with it, have a look at that, and you can see there's some really interesting different stair types. It's just in the CAD 4 folder. Right, so I'll leave it at that, but anyhow, that might just give you some ideas for your designs. And you know, a nice feature stair can be a really impressive thing in your design, and it's usually down to the railing combined with the stair that makes it interesting.